So I've just got my code on the left here and the app on the right. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a better way to reclaim some real estate here later on. But for now, we're going to use Chrome's debugging tools. Later on, we'll debug with Visual Studio itself, which is quite nice. So I'm just going to open up app.js. And let me get rid of that here. So the reason I suggested we put it here just for our rudimentary approach to this is because this is a file that ends up being very early, very high up in our dist, like our application's JavaScript. When everything is lumped together, this is one of the very early things that's foundational. So any module that is defined or that is resolved after this will have access to whatever modules we define inside here. So what we can do is, just to make our linter happy, I want to do global. I think it's global define true. We will figure it out when we run our tests at the end. And I'm going to just run define math, and that's in quotes because that's the name of our module. It's going to pull in no dependencies. And we have a callback here that's eventually going to return something. And this something is going to be sort of the raw module export. Now when we import, when we have ES6 syntax that looks like this, import resolver from, and then a module name, this is the default export. If we want named exports, we would use something that looks like this. So this would be, grabbing the object that is exported as a property called resolver, as opposed to the property called default. So in order to get what we were looking for, the goals are we want the default export to be the math object itself, and we want pi to be available as its own named export. So the way we would do that here, so we're going to export default, and that's going to be math, and then pi, math.pi. And we're going to save. And so in our console here, if we require math, we can see that we're getting this object here. And you can see that if we get the default, this is the math object itself. And if we ask for pi directly, there's pi. Make sense so far? Now, if we use one of our tricks to look into the things that the loader has loaded, require.entries, we can look down here. Let's go way down to see if it's here. So we can see that math has been included here. So we're tracing it all the way through. We've defined the module. The act of requiring it has brought it back for us. And here we can actually look in here and see this is a bunch of like meta module stuff inside which you can finally see the module, the thing we exported itself. But this is all things that Ember uses internally for bookkeeping. It's actually loader.js. This is a library that almost every Ember app uses. So great, we can use it in the console. How do we use it in our app, like more conventionally? So I'm just going to go to the application route, and I'm going to import my two symbols from the math library here, from the math module. And I'm just going to, in one of my route hooks, log it out to the console so that I can see that it works. Always do this.super. At worst, you're doing nothing. At best, you're saving yourself from a lot of pain here. And I'm just going to do console log math. Lowercase math is the thing. It's not the global, right? And I'll do pi as well. We should see some stuff printed out to the console. Oop. let's see, argument is not defined. Sorry, it's a little too squished for me. Typo. All right, so here, sorry there's so much noise here, but we've got two things exported. Here's math, and then below that, at the bottom, we have pi. So what we've done here is we've used some browser-ready ES5 JavaScript. We've used this define syntax, and we've created for ourselves an ES6 available module with a named export and a default export. And in fact, with this syntax that we're using up here, when we're importing default as math, we're actually grabbing the default export and sort of giving ourselves, within this file, a different name. So I'll put a bunch of different module kind of nooks and crannies you're seeing here. We have these things available for us. And where might this be useful? Well, you might be building an Ember add-on that wraps another library. You might be building something like, if you've used D3.js before to make a graph, you might have a library that's called Ember-company name-D3-shim or something like that. But you just want to be able to import D3, import it the conventional way, in a way that's really nice and easy to read. So this is particularly nice if you want to create modules that are not inside your application namespace, but have a much more conventional, name that's easier to understand, rather than doing like commently/D3 as the name of my module. Does that make sense? So that's the only way that we could have it available in our require entries outside of this commently namespace, which everything in your app folder is going to end up in that commently namespace. So this gives us the freedom to create modules that are named, arbitrarily. Like you can name them whatever you want. So this is very typical for like shimming in a third-party library.